a lot of the kids come home and they're home and you're having all the fun and you're doing all the things. And then they go back to school and there's a big letdown. And that, this is the way I kind of try to approach life. And I think what we talk about is that that's something that you cannot control. The kids are going back to college. And in fact, we all want them to go back to college or back to school or whatever it is. We want them to live their life. We don't, the goal is not to have them living under a roof all the time. So we can't control that. And yes, that's going to feel a little bit sad and maybe be a little bit distressing to us. But what are the things we can control? And when we look at that big picture this time of year, because of the less daytime in the cold and not getting out as much, it lends itself to feeling even crummier. So, I think if we can take these steps, it'll just make the transition post-holiday and the kids going back better. Does that make sense?
For sure. I think it just has so much to do with, well, first of all, it's just really normal, right? You have so much.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynn. I'm Dr. Brooke.
And I'm Dr. Lynn.
Thank you so much for joining us today, ladies.
It's good to be back.
It's so good to be back with you. It's post-holiday, and we're in our new studio.
Yes, and we've had 6 months off of recording.
I know. It's been crazy because we've been writing the book, which is coming out in September. So that's very exciting. But yeah, it's been, don't you feel like at least a little bit?
Yes. I mean, our topic today is really appropriate that we're starting out this way because we're talking about, it's January, first of all. I'm in Boston with you in our new studio, and there's snow on the ground, and it's about 2 weeks, 3 weeks now past the holiday.
It's June 20-ish.
Yes. January.
June?
I wish it was June.
I jumped to summer. See where my head is?
No, we're not wishing it away.
It's January. Yeah, I mean, we're like 3 weeks post-holiday, pretty much.
3 weeks post-holiday. And so we're talking about winter blues today, what you can do to keep your vibrancy and your mental health healthy, really and truly, physically and emotionally during these really, slow winter months that have just the worst reputation for dragging us down.
Absolutely. I find it really, I mean, not everybody's in cold weather, but for us here in New England and pretty much the whole East Coast, because we're just coming off of the inauguration too, and DC was slammed. I mean, the whole way up the Eastern Seaboard, we got slammed with snow and freezing cold temperatures, which is why the inauguration, if you didn't know, was inside for like the first time in a very long time, and why today I woke up and it was 3 degrees outside. And we also got, you came in, I mean, we've got 5 inches of snow. So this is a good time to talk winter blues.
Yes. Well, I left Omaha this morning at 5:00, and I believe, don't quote me, but I think it was something like -10. Like we're in a polar vortex.
3 was bad. Yeah.
Yes. And we have 0 snow. So there is something to be said. First of all, grass is greener. In this case, the trees are whiter, because when it's really cold and it's kind of nice to have snow out there, it's sort of like it like matches your view of what it should be in the winter.
Yes.
When I left home and we were flying out, it's just this gray, brown, cold landscape. But again, you can appreciate all the differences. At least we're not in California, and having, and thinking of all of you guys that are there. And if any of you guys have had homes affected and with the LA fire is just awful.
Breaks my heart.
Very much so. And just prayers and thinking of you guys and just sending all the love we can.
Right. And you're right. Here we are complaining about it's cold. It could always be far worse. So I think that's a really good perspective to keep. But it's also because I tend to minimize my feelings all the time and just be like, Brooke, people have it so much worse than you, which is true. We're very blessed, but also feeling the winter blues is a real thing, and it's okay to hold space for that too, even though it might be frivolous in the face of other things going on.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And I think, as I said, New England, Midwest, a lot of the people that listen in and a lot of women in our community are in these colder environments. But even if you're not, even if you happen to be living further south, you still have a decrease in daylight, right? And
You have a
that's one of the
decrease in daylight,
biggest.
and I have friends in Atlanta, I have friends in Florida, they get cold fronts, and so that is essentially their winter. They're not out at the beach on those
Yeah,
days. They're bundled up. Their tolerance has, really dropped
sure.
for the cold. And so that is in essence a time of, winter and hibernation, and the feeling, at least the feelings are created when it's like in the 50s.
Yeah.
For us, that's very manageable, very
Right.
great, but for them that is their winter.
Yeah, I
So
know.
they still go through those periods.
Yeah, and we have friends, as you do too, that have transplanted from, northern states and have gone down to Atlanta or Florida, and you just get accustomed because you used to be, you might have lived in New Jersey and you were used to 20 degrees, and now all of a sudden you're in Atlanta and it's 40 and you're freezing, or 50 or whatever the case. It's just kind of what happens, right? You get used to whatever you're living in. But I like this conversation, and I think it's really important, at least for me, for what I all and you know this about me. I have to tend a little bit after the holidays, a post like holiday slump. And
Yeah,
I know I'm not the only one, because other women in our community have written in, like, it's very common, especially now. I think that our kids are older, because a lot of the kids come home, and they're home and you're having all the fun and you're doing all the things, and then they go back to school, and there's a big letdown. And that, this is the way I kind of try to approach life. And I think what we talk about is that that's something that you cannot control. The kids are going back to college, and in fact we all want them to go back to college or back to school or whatever it is. We want them to live their life. We don't, the goal is not to have them living under a roof all the time. So we can't control that. And yes, that's going to feel a little bit sad and maybe be a little bit distressing to us. But what are the things we can control? And when we look at that big picture this time of year, because of the less daytime in the cold and not getting out as much, it lends itself to feeling even crummier. So, I think if we can take these steps, it'll just make the transition post holiday and the kids going back better. Does that make sense?
for sure. I think it just has so much to do with it. Well, first of all, it's just really normal, right? You have so much build up to Christmas. There's so much excitement. You're looking forward to so many things. It starts as early on as Thanksgiving, and even before. For some people, it's Halloween, and then we roll into, the build up to Thanksgiving, and so on and so forth. Plus, you're in this stress. Many of us are in this, you know, buying and shopping and decorating and baking and cooking and things that are keeping us so busy and entertained, to make everything right, that as soon as that's over and the kids, like you said, go back to school, it's so natural to have that crash.
Yep.
It's so normal to have that crash. I have been through those years, the worst, the worst. I remember when we were going back home to Canada for Christmases. So for us, this was actually our very first year in our home for
I
Christmas.
know,
I
which
mean, my
is,
daughter's 17. She's never slept in her own bed on Christmas Eve, but this year she did. But for many years, we were going back to Newfoundland with my family
yep.
to celebrate. And that would be the worst. And I'm not really sure. It's something to do with time zones and traveling, especially, and being around family and having so much merriment and eating so much sugar and, drinking the alcohol and all of those things. So you get back, and then again, the excitement's gone.
Yep.
You've got the cortisol letdown,
For
crash,
sure.
right? And now you also have sugar and detoxifying that's happening.
All of it.
All of it.
And you've come back, you're in the middle of winter, so you're not getting the vitamin D, you're not getting the sunlight, you're not probably getting outdoors as much as you'd like. There's less daylight hours. So just that, so many of us deal with like a seasonal affective type thing, and we might not even know it. It might fly under the radar, but it does make a difference. When you couple all those things with the shorter days, the less time outside, we say the phrase perfect storm a lot, but it kind of is a perfect storm.
Yeah, we're in a couple of perfect storms, right? Seasonal ones too. Real
Yeah,
seasonal ones too.
for
So
sure.
I listen, I know that you've gone up and down with this. Would you say that your trajectory for your life, it's getting steadily better, or do you still go through years? Is it just sort of like a crapshoot up and down?
Specifically with the holiday or just in general?
Loaded
I
question.
mean, it's a fair question to ask.
Specifically with the holiday,
Yeah,
January.
I would say I came back from this holiday feeling like I was hit with a ton of bricks, frankly, if I'm being honest. And I do all the things. Now, Let me preface that because leading up to this year, we were writing the book. I had a ton of travel. We had your birthday. There was just all of these things. And every once in a while, I get into a frame of mind where I'm like, I'm just going to live like the other people do. And I'm not going to worry about what I eat. And I don't need to get up and do all the things I do to keep myself feeling good. And I can let some of that go. It's just like, I just want to just be free. And inevitably, 2 months of that is fun. And then I start to crash and burn a little bit. So that was some of it. I think I just, all of the self care things that I keep in place that I talk to you guys about, it's very natural. I'm being real here. Like I'm telling you what to do. But also, like, it's real to just have periods of time where you let it go, whether you're too busy or you just are like, I don't need it anymore. I feel good. And it catches up with you. So that's some of it. But I will say that it's interesting because this year is a little bit different. I feel like age and experience has allowed me to just sit with it more and not feel like I've got to run away from those feelings, but allows me to be like, okay, you've been here before. It stinks. You're not like, you're a little bit down, but also like, let's just sit with it, see what it has to offer, and we'll put some things into play to climb back out of that and get to a good spot. And I'm not saying you guys like that I'm depressed right now or anything, but just this is real life, right? Like, um, and so I think that's where I would say the trajectory is always going up. And we talk a lot about resilience, right? Because there's always going to be stressors. There's always going to be times when you are down, but like how quickly can you get back to where you're going?
Right. And it's employing all those tactics, right? So
Exactly.
it's
That
not
we're
that
going to
you
talk
never
about.
get in the hole, it's that you know what to do quicker and you apply it faster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Um, to ask myself the same question, I think the last 2 years have, if I look back, like they have been gradually increasing. And I would like to say that I'm on a trajectory where I'm getting older and I'm, so leaving some of that behind, getting wiser with my workouts and, not letting it all, I guess, ride and not being so stressed at Christmas. The last two Christmases, I'm like, this is what it is. And it's not all this other stuff is just not ever going to make Christmas any better.
Yeah,
And so I've let some of that go. I've released some of that. I mean, we still have a nice Christmas, don't get me wrong, but I just don't feel the pressure to go to all the lengths.
sure.
So there's some of that. But as I'm thinking too and reflecting, for me, it has everything to do with having something to be excited for.
Oh,
And I remember those trips to Newfoundland. I was so excited to go home and see my family and be home that it was just this thing that was built up in my head. And when I came back, in those days, with younger children and, you know, getting back into your life after a vacation, you just didn't have the perspective to be like, life is every day,
yeah.
right? Life isn't your 2 week vacation. Life is what happens on a random Wednesday, right? And I didn't have that perspective. So now, flash forward, I have trained myself. If we do travel and I'm coming home on that plane, I think I even start this like New Year's or even before. It's like, what are we looking forward to next? And even if I don't have something super, monumental like Christmas or Thanksgiving, it's like preview show for my daughter at
Mm-hmm.
dance. It's we always go to a musical in January. We started that as a family tradition. In one of the first couple of weeks, the musical at our performing arts, it's the season starts over, and so we always try to hit a January musical. I'm just finding whatever I can find to hang on to it and building those things up in my brain.
Mm.
Now, what I will say is next year will be interesting. Next year will be my test because, of course, I have a senior. She'll be done with
Yeah.
dance. And I will still try to employ that same strategy, but I will have to work a little harder to get there because I won't have, there's a lot of dance with dance team in January. It was
Mm-hmm.
easy. It was easy to get excited. So I'll just have to work a little harder, but it's everything. I'll just have to take my own advice and everything we tell you guys and
Yeah.
do it.
I'm so glad that you said that because, I was going to take this talk to like, and we will, like strategic things that you can do that affect your mental health and your physical health this time of year. But that's an important thing too. And there are other things we could bring in, the more like, what would be the word? Existential,
Ethereal.
like
Yep.
ethereal. Yeah. Where like, let's get something in place that you can look forward to because that is part of it. Like you have all these things you're looking forward to, the kids coming home. And you'll see next year, like it's even, the holidays even bigger because you're so excited for your kids to come home. right? Like you'll be so excited to have Lila. So it's an even bigger letdown when they go back, not to like make you sad, but like this is just real talk. So I think that's really smart having something. And it doesn't like, we're not talking like you have to have this amazing trip planned because we can't all do that, but you can find something that you can get excited about. Maybe that's just like, when you're going to visit your child again in school, like there might be a day that you're going to pick when Lila's in school, like, okay, February, first weekend of February or whatever weekend in January, we're going to pop down and see you for a weekend.
Love it. I mean, half the battle in this phase of life is just staying excited and thinking optimistically
Yep.
about your future instead of pessimistically or comparing it to what it was.
Yeah.
It used to be and it isn't anymore.
Right.
It really is. And we're going to do a whole episode on that in a few weeks on just
Or
some
hours.
strategies for that, or hours in our case. For you guys, you'll if you subscribe, you'll hear it in a couple of weeks. But I know you have a bunch of practical tips, and that is really where I think most people are tuning in, expecting this conversation to go. So we need to get there. But before we do, I just want to say that being excited is my number one strategy. My number two strategy, I only have two things. And if
Okay.
I look back on the last two winters, I've been doing pretty good. And I attribute it to staying excited and two, getting outside for a walk every day, even though it's ball shrinking cold. Like still getting outside.
Did you just say ball shrinking cold?
I
Because
mean,
who are you?
I
I've
think
never.
I just channeled Mark Mao, my husband there, but yes. Or maybe you. That's a you statement.
Yes, with all these boys I'm around, that's something I would typically say.
That is a boy statement. So can we refrain that more femininely?
No, I liked it.
Get outside, just getting outside. And it's these dogs that I have that, every time I even mention or even I go to change my clothes and they're like, oh, ears perked up. Like, is it walkie time? And you can't say no to their little sweet faces. So you bundle up, you get the biggest, ugliest jacket you can find. You got the farmer boots and, you're trudging out there in the street. But when you're out there, it feels amazing. And hopefully it's during the day. If it's hard with work schedules, but
yes,
I get out there during the day. Morning is great. Early morning light. If you can do that, it's going to help benefit you in so many ways. And just breathing the fresh air and, being outside, because that's a huge part of the winter blues. We're just inside too much and we're not supposed to be. We're not designed that way.
Yeah. So we can end the show now because that's all I got.
I was going to say that's all I have too. So what else you got?
But no, I do have other things, but that is at the very top of my list. And I will tell you, like, that has been, and I didn't even know, like, normally by this time of year, like, I've had everything planned out, like my goals and all the things that I'm going to do. And I'm a little bit late because we were still getting in final edits for the book, right? So I had not concrete said to myself, I'm going to walk outside first thing in the morning every day. But what happened to me was we were in Florida visiting family and we were in northern Florida. So it was chilly. We had one day where we like laid out in the sun, but otherwise it was like, 60-ish and whatever. So, but I just happened to be like, because of you, thank you, my friend, because I had your voice. Like, there is nothing better than catching a sunrise. Like, if you can see a sunrise, and if especially you have an opportunity to do it on an ocean, you better do it, because it's like and really it's completely free and maybe like the best show you're ever going to get. And I don't think I ever really, I mean, I've seen the sunrise before because I grew up on the East Coast, not on the East Coast, but Eastern in Pennsylvania. So when we vacationed, we were going to like, what? Oh, but there's in Pennsylvania, I was like Western PA, but we would go to Maryland, to the East Coast. So there were plenty of opportunities to see the sunrise. I just never, now it's on my mind. And I think the older we get, the more we need to and probably are more prone to make space for those simple things that bring us so much pleasure, right? So I started that when we were in Florida. And what it did for me, like to just get up as the sun was getting up, take the walk for 20 minutes, and then just stand there and really like look at the sun and just be on the sand. It was incredible.
Amazing,
what it
right?
did for me. And so I was like, I came home and I was like, that's kind of I love that, but bummer. I don't live at the beach and I'm not, at least for the foreseeable next several years, like I'm not going to live at the beach. Okay. well, how can I replicate that with how can I use what I have to get the best that I can, right?
Yep.
So I was like,
Do the best you can
yeah, you
with
do the
what you
best
got.
with can with what you like. I could have sat here and been like, oh, I live in New England and it's cold and I can't walk the beach. Fine, yes, I can't. But what can I do to replicate that? And so I've been every day when I get up, as the sun is just coming up, I take my dogs out and I get to a spot on our street. And it's only like a 15-minute walk, which is plenty. It doesn't have to be a long time and it's cold. But I get to a place where I can see the sun's not coming up, obviously, over the horizon, but over the tree line. And it is still absolutely, when I tell you stunning, like stunning. And then you're going to laugh at me, but I've been wearing my grounding shoes.
I am going to laugh at you right
Yeah.
now.
I wear my moccasins and I walk like
My
we're on the
moccasins.
street. So they're basically moccasins. That's why they're grounding, because they have leather soles, right? So the plastic doesn't but you can't on asphalt, it doesn't matter, it blocks all that. But when I walk up and down our street, which is a neighborhood, so I can get into grass from time to time, the dogs are sniffing, I'll stand in the grass. So I'm not in the sand, but I'm still like basically putting my feet in the earth first thing in the morning and seeing the sunrise. And it has been huge.
Yeah.
Like it's been huge.
I think that you said about getting older and the sunsets, it's like bird watching for some reason. Like it's been there your whole life, but it's like getting older, it's like bird watching and
Yes.
sunsets. You finally get it, the sun and the birds, but you're finally going, oh, I get it now, you know. And I don't think you ever get tired of a sunrise or a sunset.
No.
Right? Couldn't you just watch it every single day? And that's what so many people do when they retire, right? That's the dream.
Yes.
No, that's great. Getting outside, it also just has to do with, um, the fresh air. It's like unreplaceable if we're
No. Yeah. It
indoors.
really
I
is.
think I'm repeating myself, but
Yeah, no, it's so important. And to your point, you're talking about sunrises, how special they are. One positive that we can take, because it's always good to see a silver lining in anything, and we can find silver linings in winter and this time of year too. I will say one thing that I love, because I don't like to be up at the crack of dawn. The sun is rising a lot later. So, I can get up and be out of my house at 7:15, 7:20, and the sun's coming up, whereas when we were in Newfoundland, we were getting up pretty darn early to go see that dang sunrise.
that was late. You need to come with us in the summer.
That's what I mean. So summer, it still felt early, but regardless, the summer is
Yeah.
always going to be earlier.
Yeah.
So that's, keep in mind that that's a positive too, if you want to try to get out there. But I think, and you think you mentioned that getting out any time of day is good, but when you do it first thing in the morning, it really does set your circadian rhythm, which is huge. You can't put in your circadian rhythm has everything to do with sleep quality. And that's one of the things I think most of us in this phase of life, and certainly me, struggle with. So
Yep. Number one non-negotiable,
yeah,
right?
yeah, that's getting outside for sure.
Yeah. So the third thing we've already talked about too. So staying excited for
Mm-hmm.
something.
Yep.
2, getting outdoors every day.
Yep. And first thing in the morning, if you can do
Yep.
it.
And then 3, vitamin D. So
Mm-hmm.
I, not everybody can do this, but personally, if you have the means at all, even if you have to give up your summer vacation, take your sun beach vacation in the winter. It's a game changer. Love it.
Yeah. And, I wonder, because I'm sure you all know this, but in case, and I don't mean to sound condescending if you didn't know this, but your vitamin D is going to come, its best sources from the sun. Right. So getting out and where we are, if you're so far north of the equator, like where you in Midwest, me in New England, it doesn't matter if you are outside and you are getting sun in the winter months, because it's not enough to get the vitamin D you need. So like and we've talked about this before, but like from October through May, you just need to supplement. But if you go away, if you are able, you have the means to go and get to warmer climate that's closer to the equator, you can soak up some of that vitamin D. It might be short term, but man, still what it does for you.
It's like steam that keeps you going longer.
It does. And I wonder if, and I was going to ask this earlier, so I'm glad we circled back, because you had mentioned that when you were going to Canada for Christmas, it was so much harder for you. And I wonder if some of it wasn't because
We were
you weren't
going more
getting
north.
vitamin D. And, more
Back in
recently,
those
you go to
days, I wasn't
Florida.
supplementing either. You're right. I'm sure.
I mean, there's many layers to that, because obviously being with your family is so exciting and the letdown of that is huge. So there's multiple things going on there, but I would guess at least some is also because it was cold and you weren't getting the sunlight, whereas you've been spending your Christmas holiday
Yeah.
for this left several years in warmer months with a lot of vitamin D.
Yeah, that's a really great that's a great point. Vitamin D has a lot to do with your mood. Most people understand that it's there to build strong bones. You might know that, and overall health, but it also helps with your mood, hormones.
For sure.
Yep.
It's
So
huge.
important.
So here's, as you said, take a trip if you can. And I would even go a step further. We've been doing this with our kids, and so have you. But if you can, and this might really resonate with you because when the kids get older, like Christmas and the holidays look different, right? Because it's not as much about like, oh, the opening the presents and the kids are little and all that magic. So you might want to think about going somewhere warm for your holiday if you can. And that's what we've been doing. I like to be at home for Christmas Day, but leaving shortly after that and going somewhere warm had a massive impact on the way I felt post holiday. Because I used to, when the kids were young, I would really, and as a matter of fact, that's why the first year that we joined you guys in Florida, we joined you because my husband was like, enough of this. Let's get to some warm weather and pull you out of this funk.
Yeah,
And it
true.
was amazing, the difference.
Okay. And then the last 2 years, I've mentioned things have been better. We have been going much closer to the equator where it is truly hot
Yeah.
and it's sun, like a lot of sun,
Right.
direct sun. Interesting. So,
Yeah. So I wonder, so that's an interesting, I mean, there's,
so the whole
again,
point is, I mean, we're not inventing vacations here, right? Like, so you're thinking you tuned in to have these blonde ladies tell me to take a trip, but what we're trying to get you to do is make that connection between the winter blues and the timing of when you plan your trip because of the vitamin D
right.
and the impact that that has on just your entire health,
Right.
right?
And can you take that trip to somewhere that it is going to be
Yeah, and
warmer and you're going
thinking
to get
about
the D?
locations. Maybe you
Yes.
guys love skiing, but you have a spring break too, and you have the means. Maybe ski on spring break instead, and do do a hot trip. Go more south
Yeah.
to help. Especially if you do have hard Januaries, if you end up being one of those women that are listening that have had a couple of rough years or during those months.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and everybody's different. So we're all different. The way we handle things are different. But I, especially at this age, it's like to just say like, oh, well, that's just the way it is. And I just got to suck it up and deal with it gets a little bit frustrating for me because it's like, no, what can we do to do better?
For
Like we
sure.
don't have to, not that we have to set these ideals that are so high that we can't hit them because that doesn't feel good either, but also like there are things that we can do, strategical things that we can do to put in place so that we don't get to those places, right? And I think that's even more important. And this time of year, it's really important to look at because we're all in this phases of life where the kids are back and
Sure.
all of these different things happen.
Yeah,
So
that's the whole point of the having this conversation.
absolutely. And back to vitamin D, just to get more practical on it again, because we're not always going to be able to get outside to do it. So if you're thinking about supplementing, which you probably need to, unless you're really close to the equator, again, from October through May, and I would say anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 IUs a day. And always make sure you're taking a vitamin D supplement that has K2 in it to support your bones.
Yep. Consult your healthcare provider for the correct
Yeah.
dosage for you. Get your levels tested. Hey, that's like probably just the most obvious but best advice that
Yeah.
I've ever heard.
Absolutely.
Because there's been years that I didn't test that and I would take it, but how do you have an idea if your supplementation is working? We've had friends that have been getting way too much, and vitamin D is fat soluble, so it can actually store in your liver, and it doesn't cleanse, it doesn't leave your body. So you don't want to back up your liver with too much either. So get your levels tested.
It's so true. And if you happen to see a healthcare provider that for whatever reason doesn't test, don't let that be your excuse because you can get test kits online and they're not that expensive. So it's very easy um, to get your vitamin D levels checked. So that's a really important
Yeah,
thing.
it's getting easier, I think, all the time.
Absolutely.
With the knowledge about how amazing it is,
Yeah,
right? It's a
absolutely.
hormone. It's really not a vitamin, it's a hormone, and it's vital.
Yes.
Especially for us in this space.
That's right. And so then beyond that, I can talk you guys through and we have the master classes. I have so much information for you all on things that you can do to stress manage, right? And that's what some of this is. So I don't think we need to go down that rabbit hole. That could be a whole nother podcast. But the vitamin D, magnesium is huge, especially if you're not sleeping well. Ashwagandha, if you're like frazzled and stressed, that'll help you with your stress response. But I think that what I would like to unpack before we wrap this up is just there's two ways that we can look at it, and I think maybe a little bit of both is a good thing, especially if you live in cold weather. Because one is like, okay, you live in cold weather, but like, let's suck it up, and what can you do to make the cold weather enjoyable? So, and is it you that coined, or is it my girlfriend in my accountability group too says there's no such thing as bad weather,
That's my
just bad
sister.
clothing?
Yeah, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. Isn't that awesome?
It
That's my
is.
sister. I don't know where she came up with it.
Yes. So
It might
my
have been her quote,
friend
but
who's in Alaska, we were just talking today, and she said the same thing. And ironically, she's in the Bahamas right now with her three best girlfriends. So here's a case in point. She knows they have been doing for like the last 5 or 6 years, the third or fourth weekend of January every year, they go on a girls' trip somewhere warm.
hey, it's really cheap in
Yeah.
January because kids' families aren't traveling. So
Yeah,
there's some
it probably
great
is.
deals in
And you're just
January.
coming off of the holiday. So
Mhm.
they're in the Bahamas right now. And she's like, I'm sitting on the beach, and like, we're all just doing our own thing. It's not like we feel like we have to be like going out and like talking the whole time we're sitting here and unpacking stuff. She's like, one's reading a book, one's taking a nap. I'm on like, but you know, they're so easy to travel with. But she's like, I can't help but sit here and think, oh, I can't wait to get back to Alaska so I can go skating and I can go outside. And I was like, who are you? But we had this whole conversation about like loving winter, like
Okay.
learning to love
Okay.
winter and the benefits and the fun things you
I-
can actually do.
I just coincidentally, even before I knew we were covering this topic, I just saw a reel about the state that has the happiest people. Guess what state it is? It's not Alaska.
I was going to
Spoiler
say
alert.
Alaska would be too
No,
obvious.
but it's Minnesota.
What? No.
Yes.
The hottest hot summers and the coldest cold.
Well, they
Sorry, I
really
didn't mean
don't. They really don't have hot summers.
No?
It's very no, not in Minnesota. I mean, we have hot summers in Iowa, but not like Texas. Again, it's all relative. So
Yeah, I guess so.
your hot is not hot.
No, I know.
Yeah. So
I'm
but no, it's true. But if you go to Minnesota, which we've spent some time there,
Yep.
they embrace winter. They don't let it stop them from doing the things that they love. In fact, they're jazzed. It's big hockey state, like a lot of families have. We have my son has a new neighbor, and he's from Minnesota. They built a ice rink in the back of their yard for the kids to play hockey.
Yeah.
So that's it. If you can't beat them, just join them. You know, especially like you said, if you're in a state where winter's inevitable, just find something you love to do, especially now. It's a great time to start a new hobby, right? So maybe it is ice skating, hockey, skiing. Hey, it's never too late.
Yeah. Or just walking or anything outside. But that's the thing. It's all about mindset. And I think we just adopt this mindset that, oh, it's winter. It's post holidays. How am I getting through this? But like, you can do all the things. You're not going to go swimming, right? If you live in New England, but you can still do the things that keep you happy in the summer months that you do in the winter. I just mentioned to my husband, like, I don't know if it's just that I've never noticed, or it's because we live in a different area of the state and we're close to the city and people are more active. I don't know what it is, but I'm like, it's so refreshing. Like when I'm outside with the dogs or outside doing anything or even driving the car, there is people out everywhere. They're running, they're walking, they're doing this, they're that, they're active. My husband and I have been going, this is another great tip. Saturday mornings, we've been going to my favorite cafe for tea and coffee and breakfast together and just chatting it up. And that place is crawling with people. And we're all bundled up in our boots and our coats and our hat, but like you're still living your life. You're not like, oh my gosh, it's winter and I can't leave home. And to your point, our neighbors just text us. We're just getting to know them because we moved, but they have a very small, I don't know if you'd even call it a pond in their backyard, whatever it is. But they're like, hey, the pond just froze over and my husband cleared it. You guys want to come over and like, we're out skating. Come on over. So there's a lot of, I think if you will open your mind and reset your mindset a little bit, you can gain a different perspective that's very helpful beyond some of these other things that we do, right?
Yep. I think that's well said. Just that's the whole theme of what we talk about in almost every podcast is just keeping open to the possibilities.
And it's more important right now, this time of year and this phase of life. But then the flip side of that is, okay, So it's the winter months. What can you lean into that you don't aren't probably going to do when it's warmer and nicer outside? Like make space for that and be like enjoy that. Like cuz for me that's tough. And I've been trying to like again sit with my feelings a little bit more and just sit with what is. And I'm not, you know me, I'm a doer. So I'm not one to like on the weekend, if I didn't do anything for several hours, I'm like, oh my gosh, this
That
day
was a
was ruined. I
waste
feel
of 2 days.
terrible and like all this. But like, I'll tell you what, there's something to be said for a cold winter day, just sitting down and watching a movie or two when you don't have anywhere to go and snuggling up with a blanket and just being okay with that. Like, that's a gift.
Yeah, that's something to do.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it might
You
sound
know?
silly,
No,
but
I
as
know.
opposed to like sitting around and feeling bad for yourself or sad that the kids are gone or whatever, like what, like create those moments for yourself. And maybe that's just like, oh, I'm going to make like a really nice hot cup of cocoa or a tea and curl up by the fire and read this book I've been wanting to read. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's just, I think reframing your word, reframing, changing your mindset a little bit around these things is so important. I know it helps me. I think
Yep.
that's what helps me the
And
most,
then
probably.
at
Oh
the
gosh,
end of
what's
the
coming?
day, I was going to say, and then move to Florida as soon as you can.
Get out.
No, I mean, winter's great. I think you're so right. I think it just have a dream for, what you want your days to look like. Maybe you will always be in your hometown in a northern climate because that's where your grandkids are. So get excited about that.
Yep.
If you have the opportunity to move, go see something new, move near warmer weather, see what that's like.
Right.
Then there's hurricanes and there's pros and cons to everything. So
Absolutely.
just adopt what the best you can where you live and just be excited about it.
Yeah.
Stay excited about it.
What question before we wrap up, just like a personal question. Do you I think I know the
I
answer
would
to
say I'm
this.
having a hot flash, but I'm pretty sure it's the
It's the
fireplace.
fire, yeah. Do you think that if you have the opportunity, like if life happened exactly the way you think you wanted it to right now, would you live in Florida? Like or would you
You
go
like
there
if
for
I
the
could hit the
winters?
easy button?
Yeah, I mean honestly, like what would be ideal for you? Would you want to be in Florida either or somewhere warm? Let's just say warm. All year long or winters?
That is not an easy yes or no question for me because of family. And our work, our practice is rooted in our community, and I love our community. But if it were up to me and, all obstacles could be overturned, yes.
Yeah, I thought you would say that.
100%. And that's just why I'm just keeping it real because as we're sitting here and going, I love the skating and the skiing. Yes, I do. And it's fun. And we should be open to that and we should try some of those new things. But at the end of the day, if you're miserable, like my husband grew up on a farm, he's miserable at
Yeah.
times in the cold, and I know as people start to age, you just feel it worse. You just seem a little bit more thin skinned. I will say, I'm so glad you brought that up because good clothing helps. Like,
Oh,
get a warmer coat, get warmer mitts, wear the hat, wear the scarf over your face. Make sure you're not, wind's not going through your legs, and then you're peachy. It's great. If you're
yes.
cold, you're not dressed right,
That's right.
right? But if like going back to my point, if you're miserable, what can you do to get out of there? Figure that out too. It's a time in our life where we're more apt to make major life changes
Hmm.
because we do know that time is of the essence.
That's right. That's absolutely right. I think I would answer that different than you. And I've been talking a lot to my husband about this just because we daydream about what life's
Well,
going to
and
look
we live
like.
in different places and you're in a new home
That might be some of it.
and your summers are great here. We have great summers too, but they get to be hot and we don't
Yep.
have water,
Yep.
you know. So I feel like I've done a good job making the best of where we've
Oh my
lived,
gosh. You have. You have.
But at the end of the day, um, I grew up on the ocean and I would love to be near the ocean again.
Yeah, it's
Simple
in
as
your
that.
heart. I just really love winter. Don't shoot the messenger.
No.
Like I don't want to be necessarily in winter all the time, but I think I would miss it if I didn't have it at least a little bit through the year. I've been talking, Kenny and I have been discussing that. I really do love winter. I love the cold. I know I'm going to like make people upset, but the way it feels in my lungs when I breathe in I feel so alive, and I don't get that in the summer. I almost, dare I say, enjoy walking my dogs outside when it's cold than I do on like an 80-degree day.
No,
I
that's
feel more alive.
I hear that. I hear that. I've been enjoying those we talk about hot girl walks, or I don't. But on
I saw your
Instagram,
post. That was really
hot girl
funny.
walks, and I'm like, I'm not here for that. I don't know about that. I'm here for the cold mom walks, like I said, get the big ugly coat on and get out.
It's true.
And yeah, I've been loving it. So
By the way, I just
that's where I'm at.
I just said to your point about the clothing, I can't remember who I just said this to, but I was like, I went outside with the dogs the other day and literally I was like Ralphie from Christmas Story. If somebody had knocked me over, I was not getting up. I had on so many layers. But
And then when you get too warm,
oh, and
that's how
it's
you
worse.
know.
It's your face is freezing. Lynn, I went out and okay, we can wrap. I see you went ready to wrap, but this is kind of funny though, because you know how like London, my oldest dog, not the biggest, is like always barking and just like a nervous wreck. She's so annoying, but we love her. We love her in spite of. We came in, it was so cold that literally all the drool that was dripping was frozen. It was frozen on her little face. I was like, oh, it's probably too cold to be out. That was the
But
day I was dressed in all the layers.
She had a big smile on her
She was
face,
happy.
nevertheless.
Anything else to add before we wrap?
No.
All that thought,
Wise
that
words.
big sigh for
no, I mean, winter is what it is. It's summer's what it is. Like what it is. There's no perfect season, right? Summer's not perfect unless you live in New England.
It's pretty darn good.
There's no perfect season, so enjoy the one you're in.
Agreed. I love that. That's a great way to end. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you're following us on all the channels, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube if you prefer to watch. Definitely go over and take a look at our website. It's www.lifeafterkids.com. We're doing all kinds of new things on there. You can access the podcast there. We have all of our free resources there, tons of them. And we also have the blog, which will be very informative for you as well.
Yes, so many good anecdotes and stories and examples and things to read about that are pertinent to your life right now.
It's great. All right, ladies, have a great day and an even better week.
Go crush winter.
Love it.